Historical fiction is one of my favorite book genres, so this week I'm going to be reading 3 Christian historical fictions to see if the Christian part makes this genre better or worse. Also, I'm going to be attempting to do 3 huge challenges while I read each book. From reading an entire book in one day, to analyzing every part of the historical timeline of a book to see if it's historically accurate, to letting a random number wheel choose how many hours I read per day. So this is going to be an intense reading week, but I'm actually very excited for it. The first book I'm going to be reading is called The Last Sin Eater by Francine Rivers, and my task for this book is to read the entire thing in one day. So the 1800s is a historical time I had never really read before, so I was super excited to start this book. It's about an old village where they rely on a man called the Sin Eater to come and take other people's sins for them after they die. Needless to say, it was a pretty creepy story, but starting off, I actually really enjoyed it. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the story so far. So there's been some kind of tragedy that's being alluded to that happened before the book began, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but whatever it was clearly traumatized the main character and her whole family. So everyone's very depressed, and the main character, who is a young girl, seems to kind of blame herself for it, whatever it was. Anyway, outside of that, what has just happened is that the main character's grandma has died, and we're first experiencing what it's like for the Sin Eater to come and take away her sins. They're about to have the funeral, and supposedly the Sin Eater is going to come. I'm really curious to see what this guy is, what he looks like, what he's gonna do. And so is the main character. She's very interested in this entire concept. And I think a big reason why she's interested in it is because she feels like she has a lot of sins that she's getting blamed for. I think the concept of them being taken away that easily is very intriguing to her. So this reading session was great because I got a lot done, but I also kind of came across a frustrating part in the story where basically this very sad town gets a little glimmer of hope, like somebody comes and visits who can really help them and give them the answers they need, and yet everyone seems to hate him and try and make him leave. Obviously this was intentional for the story, and I understand more of why this happened now, but for some reason while reading it I was getting kind of annoyed, so the book was going a little bit downhill for me, which was a little worrying, which really made me wonder if this would be the thing that would stop me from finishing the book in a day. I just finished eating lunch, which was actually really nice. It was a really good little break. Basically over halfway through the day, and I'm not halfway through the book yet. So I just need to spend some good focused time getting reading done, so that's what I'm gonna do right now. The more I got close to finishing this book, the more excited I got for the next book I had. I had really high hopes for what the story was gonna be. Also, something very funny about this book is that they have very thick accents, and every time they talk it's written exactly in the way that they would say it, and so it almost takes me a little bit longer to read every piece of dialogue because it's just worded very strangely. Then it was time for me to just focus fully on reading. It was getting late, but I only had 50 pages left, and I knew as long as I didn't fall asleep I could do it. The ending of the story ended up being so satisfying. There's a huge transformation between the scary, sad vibe in the book in the beginning and then a very happy and exciting one at the end, and it all came from the fact that this little village finally understood that Jesus alone atones for their sins, and it's not something that they need to worry about anymore. So it's the next morning, and I'm happy to say that I did finish the book last night, and now that I've read the whole thing, I can confidently say that I actually did really love the story. All the sadness and hardship in the beginning was so worth it in the end when everything came together, and I think I'm gonna end up giving it around 4 stars, and I'm just so happy that I ended up doing it. So since my love for historical fictions is so strong, I figured it was about time to make a dedicated shelf for all of my favorite books in this genre. So it might not look like much, but these are all of my favorite historical fiction books. I've read a lot, but these are the best of the best. We have East of Eden, The Nightingale, Salt of the Sea, some of my favorite books of all time in general, and it feels really good to have them all together on one special shelf. But something interesting about this shelf is that there is technically room for one more. So I was trying to decide whether I think East of Eden is good enough to go here, but I'm not sure yet, especially because I have 2 more historical fictions to read. But by the end, I'm gonna decide which one is the best, and that very special book will go on the special shelf and take the last place. So there's a little bit of pressure on these books, and I'm so excited to see which one ends up being the best and good enough to fit on the shelf. The second Christian historical fiction book I'm going to be reading is called The Peasant King by Tessa Afshar. This book actually takes place all the way back in biblical times, which is a timeline I love to read in. Something I love to do with historical fictions is while I'm reading the book, also study a little bit about the timeline it takes place in. So my task for this book is going to be to really study and analyze the historical background of this book, which means I'm going to be reading articles and studying the Bible and doing everything I can to learn as much about the history of this book as possible, because number one, it's really fun, but also because I think it could be good to test and see if this book really is as historically accurate as I feel like it should be. So I'm gonna start reading right now. So this book is starting off pretty strong. I am loving the biblical setting. It's so interesting to me. It almost feels vaguely like you're reading a Bible story, but obviously it's so different. So essentially the story is about a girl whose mother is a scribe, and she's really, really good at what she does, and one day she gets kidnapped by another kingdom. So the main girl and her sister embark on a journey to go rescue their mom, and that's pretty much all I know so far. I think there is a little bit of romance in this somewhere. So far there's been a lot of action and adventure, which I do really like in a book, and I'm so excited to see where this is going to continue to go. So after doing a little bit of research on the historical context of this book, I found out that this book takes place during the Babylonian exile in the Bible. I think it takes place post all of like the prophet books, but before say like Ezra and Nehemiah. But it is genuinely really fun for me to just learn more about this time in the Bible. I read some of the prophet books. I read a little bit of Daniel, which is I think closest to this time frame. I haven't found anything that's historically inaccurate yet, so that's a good sign. Not that I know enough to really be able to tell, but there's still more that I want to learn. I didn't like Google anything. I wanted to look some things up, which I will be doing in a little bit, but for now I'm just gonna read some more. So I've been reading this book pretty consistently now. I don't think I really filmed anything of me reading yesterday, but today I am now on 114 pages into this book. The plot so far has taken some pretty unexpected turns, at least not anything I really saw coming. I'm loving the main girl and her sister so far. They're super brave, very strong. They don't really care about what comes against them. They've just been so determined to rescue their mom that they're gonna do anything to get her. So today is a very cloudy, rainy day, which is the perfect kind of weather for me to sit down and read a ton of this book. So let's go do that. It looks really dark in here, but that's just because it's very cloudy outside. I'm just basically watching this big storm roll in. Something I learned about this book yesterday, like I said, is that it takes place during like the exile times, but like late into the exile times. And because of that, they aren't living in their own land. They're living in Persia. And so because of that, not everyone around them believes the same things as them. And this main character and her family are all Israelites, and so they believe in God, but it's not really a normal thing. Like everyone around them, the people who rule the country they're in, don't believe what they believe, so it's very abnormal for them to A, stick to their faith, but also to be vocal about it and like proud of it. I saw that there's a lot of writing in the Bible during this time where people are basically giving up on God. They feel like he's abandoned them, and so because of that, it was really hard for a lot of them to stay faithful. Obviously some did, and the family in this book is, which is also a fun aspect to read about. And as I kept reading this story, I kept thinking about the little space left on my little shelf and wondering which book should really take its place. But I had one more massive reading challenge to do before I figured that out. Another thing I'm really liking about this book is that it's very well written. I feel like no part of it is cheesy or cringy at all, and I feel like the timeline has a lot to do with that. And also it's just like the story I've been in the mood to read for a while now. Something kind of more light and fun, but also very adventurous with a little bit of romance. It's like exactly what I'm wanting right now. So reading today has just been so nice. And because I was enjoying the book so much on this day, I ended up reading late into the night, and then I woke up the next day and basically did the same thing. And after only a couple more days of reading, I finally finished the book. The Peasant King is now finished. Although I focused a lot on the history and the background of this book, obviously that was such a small part of like the actual story, and it was such a fun story. I loved all the main characters. It honestly felt a little bit like a fantasy book, even though it was a historical fiction. Very adventurous, a lot of action, and a lot of sweet moments too, and actually really loved how this ended up ending. I saw a lot of connections between this story and the story of Esther in the Bible, and I love that as well. So such a good story, and I've just been looking at my little shelf a lot and just been wondering, should this book go in this little extra spot? There's definitely a lot of potential for this one, but I'm not gonna make the decision yet because I still have one book to go, and who knows, that one might end up being my favorite, so we will see. So it is finally time for me to start my third book. I'm so excited about this book because I've gotten a lot of recommendations from you all for me to read this, so I do feel like it's gonna be a good one, and I'm very excited about that. I've decided to do this book as an audiobook. So it's called When the Day Comes by Gabrielle Meyer. Honestly, this book seems so interesting to me because it takes place in 2 different times. It's a time travel book, which just sounds so cool. Basically, the main character each day rotates between 2 different time periods. Like, she wakes up one day in the 1700s in colonial Williamsburg and lives her whole day in that life, and then she goes to sleep, and then the next day wakes up in the early 1900s in New York. And I think by the end of the book she has to choose which life she wants to permanently live in. So such a cool story, but the task I'm going to be doing while I read this book is going to be a little bit hard. Basically, I've created a number wheel on my phone as I do, and I'm going to spin this every single day today to see how many hours I'm going to be listening to per day. This can go all the way up to 10 hours in a day, which honestly I don't even know how I'm going to be able to do that. Fingers crossed I don't get it, and I basically have every number in between. So I'm going to spin right now for today. Hopefully it's not too bad. 6 hours for today. I guess it's not the worst, but that's gonna be really hard. But I need to get started right now, so let's go ahead and do that. So if you've watched my videos a lot before, you probably know that I love a good, unique plot, like something that I've never really read before. This storyline is definitely very unique. Where the book starts, she's only 20 years old, but she's already decided that she wants to live in the older Williamsburg timeline. That's just what she enjoys more. And so she's already decided, but I have a feeling that something's gonna come up that might make her change her mind and make the struggle of deciding a little bit more difficult. But anyway, I'm having a really good time listening, and I can't spend too much time talking away from it because I gotta get back to listening. As I continue to listen to this audiobook, I keep looking over at the shelf and wondering which one should be the one to go here. Obviously, if When the Day Comes ends up being a really good one, I'm just gonna buy the physical version and put it here. But I'm still thinking a lot about the last 2 books I read. The Last Sin Eater and The Peasant King were really, really good. I just need to decide which one's the best. This is a very important decision to me. Okay, so it's the next morning. I did end up finishing listening to all of my 6 hours on the audiobook yesterday. I do listen to audiobooks on a little bit of a faster speed than it's normally recorded at. So 6 hours into the audiobook is actually a little bit quicker than it seems. So it was manageable yesterday. So it is scary to think that I still have 7, 8, 9, and 10 hours on my wheel that I could possibly get. Fingers crossed that I don't, but you never know. So we'll spin the wheel and see how many hours I'm reading today. 2. So that's really relieving, especially after yesterday. Yesterday was kind of a lot, especially because if I want to listen to more than 2 hours, I can. I ended up listening to a lot of the book on this day, like way more than I needed to, but I was just that into the story, so I did a lot. I did a lot of the listening when I was working out, but I didn't film a lot of that, so, you know. But then I got up the next day and spun the wheel again to see how many I had to do next. 10 hours of reading. Thank goodness I got this today because I only have a couple hours left in the whole book, so I'm just gonna be finishing the book no matter what, but that would have been pretty terrible. So I'm gonna start listening and I'll probably be finishing it pretty soon, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So it actually didn't take me long at all to listen to the rest of this book, and before I knew it, I had finished. I ended up getting really lucky with all of these historical fictions that I read. Honestly, they all really hold up against some of my favorites, and honestly, the Christian aspect only made them better in my opinion. But I have to say, I think I had the best experience reading through The Peasant King, and because of that, it was so satisfying to finally place this last book on the shelf next to all the other great historical fictions.